Well, good morning, folks. Welcome back to Three's End. It is a nice morning this morning. A little bit of snow on the ground, a little bit chilly up here in White House, Ohio. Sun's out, just a nice morning to sit here and talk to you. So, the first story I have for you this morning deals with an event that happened when I was drinking. Now, I'm not ashamed, I'm not afraid to talk about my drinking experience. It's not something I dwell on, it's not something that I'm particularly proud of, but it's something also I'm not shameful of, nor do I shy away from. It's just something that happened with me in my life. And as I get older, I look back at other things that other people deal with, and I'll take alcoholism any day. The other thing that I always thought about with respect to alcoholism is when people are afraid to talk about it, you've got other people out there like me before I stumbled into recovery that really aren't aware of what a program of recovery, whichever route you choose to go, can offer you. So maybe if somebody hears one of these videos here that deals with alcoholism, maybe somebody will find the courage and the strength to seek help. And that's what this is all about. They tell us when we come into sobriety by way of the steps, one of the 12 steps is restored us to insanity. And there's a lot to that because when I was drinking, I was truly insane. And this story will highlight that. So without much more babbling here, I retired from the Air Force in July 1988. And I put out, I think I counted at one time, 13 applications to the airlines. So while I was waiting for the invites to interviews to come in, I did all kinds of things. I took care of my lawn, I took care of my garden, and engaged in a bit of woodworking. Now, one of the first things that came to me with respect to the insanity was my way of thinking in light that in the context that if you're not alcoholic, what's the problem with drinking before 5 or whatever the magic number is? I've often heard people say, well, I'm not an alcoholic, I don't drink before 5. Well, wait a minute, I don't get the correlation there, because my thing is, if you're not an alcoholic, then there's no harm having a drink before 5. And I often press that position, if you will. So anyway, get back to the story. We lived in San Antonio at the time, and I often did woodworking in the garage. I would open the garage door and get the saw, arrange the saws and tools I was going to need, and then go at it. And I usually would have a beer or two, which is a euphemism for 3 or 4, maybe 6, I don't know, as I was working. Well, this one day I thought to myself, now that you're retired, probably not a good idea to work on those saws or around those saws and drink beer like you used to in the past. So I thought to myself, how many beers do you think you could drink and still be responsible to handle yourself around a saw? And I came up with the number 5. I could drink 5 beers and feel like I could safely operate that saw. Insanity. Anyway, so I thought, how am I going to keep track of the number of beers I've had when I'm working? So I thought, well, why don't you make a shelf, and then as you finish your beer, set the empty up there, and then at any given time you could look up on the shelf there and see how many beers you had. Okay, fine. So I measured the width of a beer can and then the length, and cut a piece of nice wood that I had around, put a nice edge on the front and the 2 sides, and then made a couple of those curly Q things that you put on there, and then put a board in between those to mount it to the wall. Then I stained it. I mean, this was a pretty deluxe shelf. So anyway, I'm working on this thing and just put a light coat of stain on it anyway. Drilled a couple holes 16 inches apart, of course, and then mounted it on the wall. Then I took my beer cans that I had been drinking. I had set them aside that particular day, and set them up on the shelf. I had 4 of them up there, and I had one that was in my hand, and so that I could admire my work. Anyway, finished that beer and set that up there. Then it dawned on me, hey, wait a minute, that wasn't such a great project. It wasn't such a difficult project. It went pretty quick, pretty straightforward. And now I'd like to go get to work on what I'd really like to do today. But I had a problem. I had already drank my 5 beers, and dang, that was really a conundrum, I suppose. So I stood there for a moment and thought about it, and then the solution came to me. I took my garbage can, pushed it over at the end of that shelf, and then went to the other one and just shoved those 5 beer cans off into the garbage can. Good to go. And therein is some of the insanity I dealt with. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with it. Today, I just look back and shake my hand, and I am so glad I have the same number of these that I brought into the world. Anyway, just a story that came to me and gave me a little bit of a chuckle here. Thought I'd share it with you. Good to see everybody, and we'll see you again real soon.